The envelope had no return address. Just his name, scrawled in hurried handwriting he didn't recognize. Inside was a single photograph that made Mark Sullivan's heart stop, his 8-year-old daughter Emma playing in their backyard, but she wasn't alone. A shadowy figure stood watching from beyond the fence. If you've ever felt that chill of knowing someone was watching your family, stay with me. This story might just save someone you love. Hit that like button and subscribe to join our community where we share stories that could happen to any of us. Mark stared at the photo, his coffee growing cold beside him. As a single father of 2 since his wife's death 3 years ago, he'd developed a sixth sense for danger. This wasn't just an invasion of privacy, it was a threat. But who would send this? And why? The postmark showed it had been mailed locally, which only heightened his unease. The morning had started like any other in the Sullivan household. Mark had woken at 5:30 a.m., before his alarm, as he always did. The weight of responsibility never let him oversleep, not since Lisa died. He'd lain there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, gathering his strength for another day of being both mother and father to Emma and her 12-year-old brother, Jack. The routine was sacred: shower, start coffee, pack lunches, wake the kids, make breakfast, check homework, brush Emma's hair, remind Jack about his inhaler, and somehow get everyone out the door by 7:45. Mark had it down to a science now, though it hadn't always been that way. Those first months after the accident had been chaos, grief making even the simplest tasks seem insurmountable. But they'd found their rhythm eventually. Mark had learned to French braid Emma's hair by watching YouTube tutorials late at night. He'd figured out how to talk to Jack about girls and feelings, though those conversations still felt like navigating a minefield. They were making it work. They were healing. Until the photograph arrived. Mark studied it again, trying to make out details of the figure. Tall, wearing dark clothing, face obscured. Standing just beyond their property line, where their yard backed up to the small wooded area that separated their subdivision from the next. The photo had been taken recently. Emma was wearing the purple unicorn shirt she'd gotten for her birthday just 2 weeks ago. His first instinct was to call the police, but what would he tell them? That someone had taken a picture of his daughter playing in their yard? It wasn't illegal to photograph someone from public property, even if it was deeply unsettling. And the woods weren't exactly public, but they weren't his property either. Mark slipped the photo back into the envelope and tucked it into his pocket as he heard Emma's footsteps on the stairs. "Daddy, Jack used all the hot water again," she complained, her damp hair hanging in tangles around her face. "Did not." Jack called from the bathroom. "You take forever." Mark forced a smile. "Come here, squirt. Let's get that hair brushed." As he worked the brush through Emma's hair, his eyes kept drifting to the window that faced their backyard. Was someone out there now, watching them? The thought made his skin crawl. "Daddy, you're pulling," Emma whined, bringing him back to the present. "Sorry, sweetie." He gentled his touch, focusing on her. "How about pancakes this morning? With chocolate chips?" Her eyes lit up. "Is there any other kind?" He winked, pushing his worry aside for the moment. After dropping the kids at school, Mark drove straight to the police station. Officer Ramirez, a woman he knew from community events, listened patiently as he explained about the photograph. "I understand your concern, Mr. Sullivan," she said, examining the photo. "But as you suspected, there's not much we can do legally at this point. No explicit threat was made. So I'm supposed to wait until something happens to my kids?" Mark couldn't keep the edge from his voice. Officer Ramirez's expression softened. "I didn't say that. I'll make a report, and we can increase patrols in your area. In the meantime, I'd recommend security cameras, motion sensor lights. And talk to your neighbors, see if anyone's noticed anything unusual." Mark nodded, though the advice felt inadequate against the knot of fear in his stomach. On the drive home, he called his boss to take the day off. Some things couldn't wait. By afternoon, Mark had installed security cameras covering every angle of their property, motion sensor lights along the fence line, and had started researching alarm systems. He'd also walked the perimeter of his yard, looking for any signs of intrusion, but found nothing out of the ordinary. As he stood at the edge of his property, staring into the woods, he felt a prickle on the back of his neck. The sensation of being watched. He turned quickly, scanning the trees, but saw only shadows and sunlight filtering through the leaves. "Everything okay?" Mark startled at the voice, turning to find his neighbor, Elena Vasquez, standing at the edge of her yard. She was in her early 40s, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, wearing gardening gloves and holding pruning shears. "Sorry," she said. "Didn't mean to scare you." "No, it's fine." Mark ran a hand through his hair. "Just a little on edge today." Elena studied him, her head tilted slightly. "Anything I can help with?" "I noticed you've been pacing the yard for the last hour." Mark hesitated. He barely knew Elena, though she'd moved in next door about 6 months ago. They exchanged pleasantries when they saw each other, and she'd brought over a casserole when Emma had the flu, but that was the extent of their relationship. Something made him pull out the envelope. "I got this in the mail today." Elena set down her shears and took off her gloves before accepting the envelope. Her expression darkened as she looked at the photograph. "This is..." she began, then stopped, looking up at Mark with concern. "Have you called the police?" "Just came from there. They can't do much without an explicit threat." Elena handed the photo back, her brow furrowed. "That's Emma, right? Your daughter?" Mark nodded. "And you don't recognize the person watching her?" "No. Can't even tell if it's a man or woman from the photo." Elena was quiet for a moment, then said, "I'm a private investigator." Mark blinked in surprise. "I thought you worked from home." "Some kind of tech job." "I do work from home. Digital forensics is my specialty, but I'm licensed as a PI." She glanced at the woods, then back at Mark. "I could help you look into this, if you want." Mark studied her, wondering why she was offering. They weren't friends. But there was something in her eyes, determination, and maybe something else. "Understanding?" "Why would you do that?" he asked. Elena's expression shifted, something vulnerable flashing across her face before she composed herself. "Let's just say I know what it's like to feel unsafe in your own home. No one should have to live with that, especially not kids." Mark felt a surge of gratitude, mixed with caution. "I appreciate the offer, but I can't afford to hire a PI right now." "I'm not asking for payment," Elena said firmly. "Consider it a neighbor helping a neighbor." Before Mark could respond, his phone rang. The school. His heart jumped to his throat as he answered. "Mr. Sullivan? This is Mrs. Patel from the front office. Jack had an asthma attack during gym class. He's stable now, but we think you should come pick him up." "I'll be right there," Mark said, already moving toward his car. Elena called after him, "Everything okay?" "Jack's having asthma issues. I need to get to the school." "Go," she said. "We'll talk later." The drive to school was a blur of worry, not just about Jack's asthma, which hadn't flared up in months, but about the photograph, the watching figure, the sense that his family's safety had been compromised. By the time he reached the nurse's office, Mark's hands were shaking. Jack sat on the edge of a cot, his face pale but his breathing steady. The school nurse, a kind-faced woman named Ms. Chen, was sitting beside him. "Dad," Jack said, looking embarrassed. "I'm fine. They didn't need to call you." Mark knelt in front of his son, placing a hand on his knee. "What happened, buddy?" Jack shrugged. "Just couldn't catch my breath during the mile run." "No big deal." Ms. Chen gave Mark a reassuring smile. "His inhaler worked quickly, but we thought it best he take it easy for the rest of the day." Mark nodded, trying to hide his relief. Thanks for taking care of him. As they walked to the car, Jack kept insisting he was fine, that Mark was overreacting. But Mark couldn't shake the feeling that everything was connected somehow. The photograph, Jack's sudden asthma attack after months without incident. Dad, seriously, you're being weird, Jack said as they pulled into their driveway. It was just asthma. I probably pushed too hard trying to beat Tyler's time. Mark forced a smile. You're right. Sorry, bud. Just worried about you. Inside, Jack headed straight for the kitchen, his near-death experience, as he dramatically called it, having apparently worked up an appetite. Mark followed, his eyes automatically scanning the house, checking windows and doors. Where'd all the cameras come from? Jack asked, mouth full of peanut butter sandwich. Mark had forgotten about the security cameras he'd installed earlier. Just thought it was time to upgrade our home security. Jack raised an eyebrow, looking suddenly older than his 12 years. Does this have something to do with why you've been acting weird all day? Mark hesitated. He didn't want to frighten his son, but Jack was perceptive. Lying would only make him more suspicious. Someone sent me a photograph, Mark said carefully. Of Emma playing in the backyard. There was someone watching her from the woods. Jack's eyes widened. Like a stalker? I don't know what it is, Mark admitted. But I'm taking precautions until I figure it out. Does Emma know? Mark shook his head. And I'd like to keep it that way for now. No need to scare her. Jack nodded solemnly. I won't say anything. He paused, then added, but you should tell her. Emma's tougher than you think. Mark smiled sadly. Jack was right. Both his children had shown remarkable resilience since losing their mother. Sometimes he forgot how strong they were, too busy trying to protect them from further pain. I'll think about it, he promised. That evening, after dinner and homework, when the kids were settled in front of a movie, Mark stepped outside to check the security cameras. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the yard. As he adjusted one of the cameras, he noticed Elena in her yard, seemingly doing the same thing. Great minds, she called, walking toward their shared property line. Mark met her halfway. You have security cameras too? Installed them when I first moved in, she said. Professional habit. Mark nodded toward his house. I told Jack about the photograph. Not Emma yet. How did he take it? Better than I expected. Kids are resilient. Elena's expression softened. They are. More than we give them credit for sometimes. She hesitated, then added, I've been thinking about your situation. The photograph was meant to frighten you, not necessarily as a prelude to something worse. How can you be sure? I can't, she admitted. But if someone wanted to harm your family, why warn you first? Why not just act? Mark considered this. So you think it's what, a scare tactic? But why? Elena shrugged. That's what we need to figure out. Have you had any conflicts recently? At work, in the neighborhood, online? Mark thought about it. Nothing significant. I'm an accountant. The most controversial thing I do is tell clients they can't claim their vacation as a business expense. That earned a small smile from Elena. What about the kids? Any issues at school? Bullying? Not that I'm aware of. Jack's pretty popular, and Emma's teacher says she gets along with everyone. Elena nodded thoughtfully. What about your late wife? Could this be connected to her somehow? The question caught Mark off guard. Few people brought up Lisa directly. I don't see how. She died 3 years ago. Car accident. I'm sorry, Elena said quietly. I didn't mean to pry. It's okay. Mark sighed, looking back at his house, where he could see Jack and Emma through the window, laughing at something on the TV. I just want them to be safe. They've been through enough. We'll figure this out, Elena promised. I'm good at what I do. Mark studied her, this neighbor he barely knew who was suddenly offering to help protect his family. Why are you doing this, really? Elena was quiet for a long moment, her gaze fixed on some point in the distance. 5 years ago, I had a stalker. An ex who couldn't accept that things were over. The police couldn't do anything until he actually hurt me. Her hand unconsciously moved to her side, as if touching an old wound. By then, it was almost too late. I'm sorry, Mark said, understanding now the look he'd seen in her eyes earlier. That must have been terrifying. It was. But it also led me to this career. Now I help people the system can't or won't help. She turned to face him directly. So when I say I understand what you're feeling right now, I mean it. Mark felt a connection forming between them, born of shared concern and vulnerability. Thank you. Elena nodded, then glanced at her watch. It's getting late. Why don't you come over tomorrow morning after the kids are at school? We can make a plan. I'd like that, Mark said, surprised to realize how much he meant it. That night, after checking all the doors and windows twice, Mark lay awake, listening to the sounds of the house. Every creak, every whisper of wind against the windows set his nerves on edge. The photograph was on his nightstand, a reminder of the threat he couldn't quite define. His phone buzzed with a text message. Elena, just checked my security footage from the past week. Nothing unusual on my side of the property line. We'll keep monitoring, The message was simple, but it brought a surprising amount of comfort. Mark wasn't facing this alone anymore. Thanks. See you tomorrow, he texted back. He finally drifted off to sleep around 2 a.m., only to be awakened at 3:17 by a notification from one of his new security cameras. Motion detected in the backyard. Mark was out of bed in an instant, heart pounding as he grabbed his phone to check the footage. The night vision camera showed a figure moving along the edge of his property, near the woods. The same area where the shadowy figure had been standing in the photograph. Without thinking, Mark grabbed the baseball bat he kept in his closet and headed downstairs, moving quietly to avoid waking the kids. At the back door, he hesitated, common sense warring with the primal urge to protect his territory, his family. Common sense won. Instead of going outside, he called the police, reporting a trespasser on his property. Then he texted Elena, someone's in my backyard right now. Called police, Her response was immediate, on my way. Stay inside, Mark watched through the window as patrol cars arrived, their lights flashing silently. They'd respected his request not to use sirens, to avoid waking the neighborhood. Officers with flashlights searched the woods and the perimeter of his property, but found nothing. Motion sensors could have been triggered by an animal, one officer suggested. Raccoon, maybe a deer. Mark showed them the security footage on his phone. That's not an animal. The officer studied the grainy video. Hard to tell, sir. But we'll file a report and keep an eye on the area. As the police were leaving, Elena appeared at his back door, wearing a jacket over pajamas, her hair hastily pulled back. Any sign of them? She asked, stepping inside when Mark opened the door. Nothing. Police think it might have been an animal. Elena's expression said what she thought of that theory. Show me the footage. They sat at Mark's kitchen table, reviewing the video several times. The figure was definitely human-shaped, moving with purpose along the tree line.